In the depths of space, aboard a towering starship, an alien girl named Lyra stood at the observation deck, gazing out at the swirling cosmos. She had never seen a human up close before, but she had heard tales from the travelers who visited her planet. Tales of strength, intelligence, and how humans were unlike any other species in the galaxy. Today, she would meet one for the first time. Lyra, a young alien of the Zarnik species, was curious. Her people had lived for centuries in the outer reaches of the galaxy, secluded from the more populated worlds. But when a mysterious signal had been detected, originating from Earth, it had sparked her interest. The Council of Elders had sent her, one of the most promising of her species, to learn more about these humans, to understand them, to study them. She was told that humans were creatures of passion and ambition, often driven by emotions and desires that no other species could truly understand. Lyra found that fascinating. On her world, emotions were controlled, and relationships were more about alliances than affection. But what if humans were different? What if they felt things more deeply, more profoundly? As the starship approached Earth, Lyra's excitement grew. She wondered if the stories were true. Could a human be as powerful as they said? Could their emotions be as wild as the stars themselves? Her elders had warned her not to fall into the human trap of passion, but she couldn't help but be curious. These says, ship landed softly in the heart of a bustling human city. Lyra stepped out, her silvery blue skin glistening under the Earth's sun, and her dark, multifaceted eyes scanning the crowd. She had heard about the strange ways humans communicated, but nothing could have prepared her for the overwhelming wave of energy she felt as she walked among them. Humans were so different, yet so alive. There was something about their energy that made her feel both fascinated and small. Their laughter, their cries, their gestures, it all seemed so vibrant and unpredictable. Lyra's task was clear: learn what she could about humans and report back to her people. But as she wandered deeper into the city, she began to wonder if there was more to these humans than just study. Could there be something beyond knowledge? Something she wasn't prepared for? At a small cafe, she saw him. The human. He was sitting alone, sipping a cup of tea with a look of quiet contemplation on his face. His features were rugged, his dark hair unkempt, yet there was a calmness about him that intrigued her. He wasn't like the others. The humans she had seen so far were busy, loud, and chaotic. But this one seemed to understand the universe in a way she couldn't quite place. Lyra hesitated. She had been trained to observe, to analyze, but now, faced with the object of her curiosity, she felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. It wasn't fear, but something else. A pull, a desire to understand him more deeply. She stepped closer, her heart racing in a way she hadn't anticipated. The human looked up, his brown eyes meeting hers. For a moment, time seemed to slow down. He smiled gently, as though he had been waiting for her, and Lyra couldn't help but feel a strange warmth inside her. "Would you like to sit?" he asked, his voice calm and inviting. Lyra blinked, momentarily unsure of what to say. Her people didn't engage with outsiders like this, but there was something in his eyes, something that made her want to sit, to talk, to learn more. Against her better judgment, she nodded and took a seat. They exchanged a few pleasantries, talking about Earth, about space, and about their respective species. But as the conversation flowed, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this meeting. She had been told that humans were unpredictable, that their emotions could lead to chaos. But sitting here with this human, she began to wonder if they were simply misunderstood. As the conversation progressed, Lyra realized that her initial thoughts about human emotions might have been far too simplistic. There was a depth to this human, a layer of experience and understanding that she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about physicality or passion. It was about connection, about something deeper that went beyond the surface. But Lyra couldn't forget her mission. Her curiosity had led her to this point, but she still had to be cautious. The elders had warned her not to allow herself to become too attached to any human, to keep her emotions in check. She had a job to do, and she couldn't let herself be swayed by something as unpredictable as feelings. As the day wore on, Lyra couldn't help but feel a strange sense of longing. What if the stories about humans weren't just stories? What if, beneath all the chaos and unpredictability, there was something truly special about them? Something she had yet to fully understand. And as the humans smiled at her again, Lyra found herself wondering if she could learn to embrace that connection. Perhaps for the first time she might truly experience what it meant to be human. The next few days were a blur for Lyra. As she spent more time on Earth, she became increasingly fascinated with the humans. Their lives, though chaotic and unpredictable, seemed filled with a strange beauty. Everywhere she looked, she saw emotions, in their purest forms: joy, sorrow, excitement, and even fear. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced on her own world. She met more humans in the days that followed, some kind, some curious, and others eager to teach her about their culture, but none of them made her feel the way he did. The human she had met at the cafe lingered in her thoughts, his smile, his calm demeanor, and the way he had spoken to her, as though he could see her for more than just an alien visitor. Lyra was starting to realize that there was something deeply unfamiliar about this experience. She had been trained to observe, to gather information, but no one had told her about the feelings that might arise. Her mission was clear: learn about the humans and report back to her people. But with every passing moment, she found herself becoming more conflicted. One afternoon, she found herself back at the cafe, hoping to see him again. She hadn't planned it, but the thought of him had drawn her there. Her heart beat faster than it should have, and she didn't know why. As she entered, the soft scent of brewed coffee filled the air, and she spotted him sitting in the same spot, looking at a book. He looked up, and for a brief moment, their eyes met again. "You came back," he said with a grin, setting his book aside. "I didn't think I'd see you again so soon." Lyra smiled, but there was an unfamiliar sensation building inside her, something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something more, something deeper. She sat down across from him, not bothering to hide the way her heart raced. I wanted to learn more," Lyra said, her voice soft. She hadn't meant to sound so vulnerable, but it was true. There was something about him that made her want to understand him better. It was a feeling she couldn't ignore, no matter how much she tried. "You're always welcome here," the human replied, his voice gentle. "I'm glad you came. I've been wanting to ask you more about your people, too. Your planet, your culture." Lyra nodded. She had spent so much time observing and learning about humans, but she realized now that she hadn't really shared anything about herself. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was time to let down the walls she had built around herself. She began to speak about her home planet, Zarnix, a world of serene landscapes and calm, controlled lives. The Zarnix people were highly intelligent, but emotions were kept in check. Relationships were functional, built around logic and survival rather than connection. The thought of love, passion, and physical closeness was foreign to her people. "But that's not how humans are, is it?" Lyra asked, looking directly into his eyes. "You live with your emotions. It's powerful." The human leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, it can be, but it's also what makes us who we are. Emotions drive us. They guide us. And even though they can lead to mistakes, they also lead to beautiful things." Lyra was silent, for a moment, digesting his words. She had never thought of emotions as something that could create beauty. She had been taught to view them as chaotic, as something to be controlled. But the more time she spent with him, the more she began to see the truth in what he said. Her gaze wandered for a moment, and as it did, she noticed how close they were sitting. His presence seemed to fill the space between them, yet it didn't feel suffocating. It felt comforting, like a presence that was steady and sure. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so at ease. The human reached for his cup of tea, taking a sip, and then placed it back on the table. His eyes never left hers. "I know what you're doing here, Lyra. You're studying us, aren't you? Trying to understand how we live, how we feel. But sometimes, I think you're learning more than you expected. Sometimes, I think you're learning something about yourself." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. His words hit her harder than she had expected. How could he know what was happening inside her? How could he understand that her curiosity had turned into something else, something she hadn't planned for, something she hadn't been trained for? "I don't know what I'm feeling," Lyra admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Everything is so new, so different. I didn't expect to feel this way." The human smiled gently, as if he understood. "Feelings can be confusing, but they're part of who we are. You're not alone in this." Lyra looked down at the table, lost in thought. She had always prided herself on her control, on her ability to understand and manage the world around her. But here, with this human, she felt vulnerable in a way she had never experienced before. The walls she had so carefully built around herself were starting to crumble. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I came here to observe, to learn, but now I feel like I'm learning more than I ever imagined." The human's expression softened. "It's okay to feel. It's okay to not have all the answers. Sometimes it's the journey that matters more than the destination." Lyra took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling within her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure about her mission. She wasn't sure if she wanted to leave Earth, or if she wanted to stay and explore these feelings she was just beginning to understand. As the conversation continued, Lyra realized that she had crossed a line she hadn't anticipated. She had come to study humans, but now she was becoming a part of their world in a way she never expected, and it scared her. The days following their conversation in the cafe were filled with quiet reflection for Lyra. She continued to explore Earth and meet more humans, but her mind kept returning to the human she had met. There was something in him that she couldn't ignore, something that called to her deeper than mere curiosity. She found herself drawn to his presence, his calm demeanor, and the way he seemed to understand her without needing to speak. But at the same time, a feeling of confusion lingered. She was torn between her mission to observe and report back to her people and the strange emotions that were beginning to surface. Her people had taught her to be objective, to remain distant. But here, with him, she felt as if everything was shifting, like the very foundation of her understanding was crumbling. Lyra sat in her room one evening, staring out at the city skyline. The stars twinkled in the distance, and for a moment she felt the vastness of the universe, the weight of all that she had yet to understand. She had always been a student of knowledge, a seeker of facts. But now she found herself seeking something more intangible, something beyond facts and figures. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on her door. She stood quickly, her heart racing as if she already knew who it was. When she opened the door, there he was, the human, standing there, with a gentle smile on his face. His presence seemed to fill the space around them, and for a moment Lyra forgot to speak. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "I was wondering if you wanted to go for a walk. I know we've talked a lot, but I thought maybe you'd like to see more of the city, from a different perspective." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had been thinking about him constantly, and now here he was, offering to spend more time with her. She had to admit, the idea was tempting. There was something about the way he spoke to her, the way he made her feel seen, not as an alien, but as someone who mattered. She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. I'd like that. They walked together through the city streets, the noise of the bustling crowd fading into the background as they moved farther from the busy areas. The night air was cool, and the lights from the city streets cast a soft glow on the pavement. Lyra found herself feeling more at ease than she had in days, her usual tension slipping away with every step. They passed through a park where trees with glowing leaves swayed gently in the breeze. The park was quiet, the hum of the city now a distant sound. It was peaceful, almost serene. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Lyra said, breaking the silence. "About how you said emotions guide you. About how they're a part of who you are. I didn't fully understand it before, but now I think I'm starting to. But at the same time, I'm not sure if I should be feeling this way." The human stopped walking and turned to face her. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to understand everything all at once. Sometimes just feeling is enough." Lyra looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw not just a human, but a connection, a bond that was unspoken, yet undeniable. She had come to Earth to study, to observe, but now she realized she had become a part of something bigger. She wasn't just an alien visitor anymore. She was someone who had experienced something true, something real. "I don't know if I can explain it," Lyra said, her voice quiet. "But I feel like I'm changing. Since I've been here, everything seems different. You've shown me a side of humanity that I never thought possible. I don't know how to go back to what I was before." The human reached out and gently touched her arm, his hand warm against her cool skin. The simple gesture sent a ripple through Lyra, and she found herself leaning into the touch, as if it grounded her in a way she hadn't expected. "You don't have to go back, Lyra," he said, his voice low and steady. "You can change. We all can. That's what makes us human. We're always learning, always growing, and sometimes we learn the most when we open ourselves up to what's new and unexpected." Lyra nodded slowly, taking in his words. She had always been taught that change was something to fear, something to avoid. But here, with him, she realized that change could be a beautiful thing. It didn't have to be something to run from. It could be something to embrace. They continued their walk through the park, the quiet stretching between them. But it was a comfortable silence. Lyra's mind was racing with thoughts, but she felt at peace in the moment. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected to form such a strong connection with a human, someone so different from her in every way. As they reached a quiet bridge overlooking a river, the human stopped again, looking out at the water. Lyra followed his gaze, mesmerized by the shimmering reflections of the city lights on the surface of the river. It was beautiful, peaceful, and in that moment she felt something shift inside her. She didn't need to have all the answers right now. She didn't need to understand everything. All she had to do was feel, to be present in the moment. And for the first time, she felt like she was truly living, not just observing. "I don't know what the future holds," Lyra said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know that I want to see it with my own eyes, not as an outsider, but as someone who is part of this." The human turned to her, his expression serious but full of warmth. "We're all part of something, Lyra. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out where we belong, but I think you've already found it." Lyra felt a rush of emotions flood her heart. She had come to Earth to study, to observe, but now she realized that she was here to experience something far more. important. She was here to understand humanity, not just from a distance, but through connection, through the heart. The days that followed their walk by the river seemed to blur together for Lyra. She had come to Earth expecting to complete a simple mission: observe, learn, and report back to her people. But now, she was caught in a whirlwind of emotions she hadn't anticipated. Her heart, once steady and controlled, was now a battlefield of feelings she couldn't fully understand. She spent time with the human every day, finding herself drawn to him more than she had expected. They talked about everything: his world, her world, the differences between them, and the similarities they shared. Every conversation brought them closer, and every moment she spent with him seemed to erase the distance that had once felt so important. Lyra's mission had always been clear: observe and report. But now, she found herself questioning everything. Her elders had warned her not to get too close to any human, not to allow herself to be swept away by emotions. But how could she ignore what she was feeling? The connection she had with him was undeniable, and the more she tried to push it away, the stronger it became. One evening, as they sat on a bench in the park, watching the stars twinkle above them, Lyra found herself lost in thought. The soft rustling of the leaves in the breeze, the distant hum of the city, and the quiet presence of the human next to her created a peaceful atmosphere that she had never experienced before. She had spent her life studying the stars, seeking knowledge, but now she felt something else, a need to understand herself, to understand her place in the universe. Lyra, the human's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. Is everything okay? She turned to him, surprised by how natural it felt to be with him, to share this moment. I don't know, she said honestly. I came here to observe, to learn, but I didn't expect to feel so conflicted. He looked at her with understanding in his eyes. It's okay to feel conflicted. It's okay to not have all the answers. You're human too in your own way. We all struggle with what we want and what we think we should do. Lyra looked down at her hands, her mind racing. But my people, my elders, they told me not to get involved with humans. They said it would be dangerous, that emotions could cloud my judgment. And yet, every time I'm with you, I feel something more, something I can't explain. The human smiled softly, his gaze steady. You're not the first person to feel conflicted about what they want. It's a part of life, Lyra. We're always caught between what we're told to do and what we actually feel. But maybe the real question is, what do you want? Lyra's heart skipped a beat at his words. What did she want? That was the question she had been avoiding for days. She had always prided herself on being logical, on thinking things through. But now, her heart was leading her in a direction she wasn't sure she was ready to follow. I want to understand, she whispered. I want to understand what this feeling is, what it means to be with someone not just as an observer, but as someone who cares. The human's expression softened, and he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The touch was simple, yet it sent a jolt of warmth through Lyra's body. It was the kind of touch that spoke volumes without saying a word. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone was enough to make her feel understood. You don't have to have it all figured out, he said. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to feel, to let yourself experience what's happening in the moment. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to control it. Just be. Lyra took a deep breath, her mind and heart still in turmoil. She had spent so long trying to control everything, trying to keep herself detached, but now, with him, she didn't feel the need to hide anymore. She could feel the warmth of his hand in hers, and it was enough. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she had to have all the answers. She could simply be. "I never imagined this," Lyra said quietly, looking up at the stars. Again. "I never imagined that I would feel this way. But now that I do, I'm not sure how to move forward." The human squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to move forward right now. Just take it one step at a time. We can go through this together." Lyra nodded slowly, a sense of relief washing over her. She had been carrying the weight of her mission, of the expectations placed upon her, and it had been suffocating. But now, with him, she felt like she could breathe again. She could let go of the fear, the doubt, and just experience the world without trying to control it. But even as she felt this sense of peace, another thought lingered in the back of her mind. If she let herself fully embrace this connection, what would it mean for her mission? What would it mean for her people? Could she return to Zarnix after all of this? Or would she be forever changed by her time on Earth? Her heart ached at the thought. She didn't want to leave, but she knew that her mission had to come first. Her people needed the knowledge she could bring back. And yet she didn't want to lose what she had found here. The bond she had with this human was more than just curiosity. It was something deeper, something that couldn't be easily ignored. The human seemed to sense her internal struggle. He let go of her hand and looked at her, his expression gentle. "You're not alone in this, Lyra. No matter what happens, we'll figure it out together. Just remember, you don't have to make all the decisions today." Lyra looked at him, her heart full of conflicting emotions. But in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't ready to let go of this connection. Not yet. The days passed, but for Lyra, they felt like they had stretched into weeks. Her thoughts were consumed by the human and the feelings she couldn't control. Her mission, her purpose, had always been clear: observe, understand, and report. But now, the lines between observation and involvement were blurred beyond recognition. She didn't know where one ended and the other began. She found herself returning to the park where they had walked just days before, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. The world around her seemed to grow more complicated with every passing moment. Earth, once so unfamiliar and strange, now felt like a place where she might belong. She had never thought much about belonging before, but now, with each passing day, it became harder to ignore the pull she felt to the human beside her. She had avoided confronting the truth for too long. Every moment with him brought her closer to a decision she didn't know if she was ready to make. Could she leave this world, leave him and return to Zarnix? Or had she already made her choice, without even realizing it? It was in the quiet of the park that the human found her again. He had come, as he often did, without warning. His presence was like a steady force that calmed her mind, even though it made her heart beat faster. There was something in him that felt like home, something she hadn't realized she was missing until now. "Lyra?" His voice broke the silence, his tone soft yet filled with understanding. "I've been thinking about everything we've talked about. I know things are complicated, but I just want you to know that no matter what, I'm here for you." Lyra turned to him, her chest tightening. How could he be so sure? How could he understand when she barely did herself? But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no hesitation, no judgment, only a steady certainty that made her feel understood, even when she didn't understand herself. "I don't know what to do," Lyra said, her voice low and unsure. "I never imagined that I would feel this way. I never thought that I would be. Torn between my duty and my feelings." He sat down beside her, his presence a comforting weight beside her. "It's okay to be torn. Life isn't always simple, and sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that matter the most." Lyra looked down at her hands, the familiar weight of her mission pressing down on her once more. She had come to Earth with one purpose: to observe. to learn about humanity. But now, everything had shifted. She was learning something about herself. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was someone who felt, who cared, and it terrified her. "What if I leave?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I go back to Zarnix and I lose this connection? I don't want to lose what I've found here." He reached out and gently took her hand, the simple touch making her heart race. "You won't lose it, Lyra. No matter where you go, the things you feel, the things we've shared, they don't just disappear. They're a part of you now, and they'll always be with you." Lyra's heart swelled at his words, but the fear still clung to her. Could she really leave this behind? Could she return to a life of control and detachment, knowing that she would never again experience the kind of connection she had found with him? "I don't know if I can," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've spent my whole life hiding behind logic, hiding behind what I was taught. But now, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what my purpose is." The human squeezed her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Maybe your purpose isn't just about what you were taught. Maybe it's about finding who you really are. You've already taken the first step by allowing yourself to feel. Maybe that's the most important thing." Lyra looked at him, her chest tight with emotion. His words resonated with her more than she had expected. Maybe she had been looking at her purpose all wrong. Maybe it wasn't about duty or expectations. Maybe it was about growth, about the ability to change and evolve. Maybe it was about embracing who she was becoming, not just who she had been. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly, as if releasing the weight that had been pressing down on her. She had been afraid to let go, afraid to make a choice that might change everything. But now, sitting here with him, she realized that she didn't need to have everything figured out. She didn't need to make the perfect decision. She just needed to decide what felt right. "I've been so afraid," she admitted, her voice shaky. "Afraid of what this means, afraid of what will happen if I let go of everything I've known. But I can't ignore what I feel anymore." The human nodded, his expression filled with quiet understanding. "You don't have to know everything right now, Lyra. All you have to do is decide what feels right for you." Lyra's heart was still racing, but this time it was a feeling of clarity that filled her chest. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to follow the path that had been laid out for her. She could choose her own path, one that allowed her to embrace what she felt and what she had discovered on Earth. With a deep breath, Lyra made her decision. "I want to stay," she said, her voice steady now, as if the weight of her choice had lifted. "I want to stay here with you. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that this connection, this feeling, it's real. And I don't want to lose it." The human's face softened into a smile, and for the first time, Lyra saw something she hadn't expected. Relief. "I'm glad," he said quietly. "We'll figure this out together. No matter what happens, we'll face it together." Lyra looked up at the stars once more, the vastness of the universe no longer feeling so distant or cold. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging, not just in the universe, but with him, and that was enough for her. The decision had been made. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Lyra felt a sense of clarity. The weight that had hung over her shoulders for so long had lifted, and in its place was a feeling of peace, one that she had never expected to find. She had chosen to stay, to embrace the feelings she had long tried to ignore, and to explore what it meant to live and connect, not as an outsider, but as someone who truly belonged. The days that followed were filled with new experiences. Lyra spent more time with the human who, she now realized, had become more than just a subject of study. He had become her guide, her confidant, and someone she couldn't imagine being without. Their connection deepened with every conversation, every shared glance, and every moment they spent together. She was learning more about humans than she had ever thought possible, not just their actions, but their hearts. One evening, they sat in the same park where they had shared their first walk together, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of pink and gold. The city buzzed in the distance, but in this quiet moment, the world seemed to slow down, allowing Lyra to just be. "Do you ever wonder if we were meant to meet?" Lyra asked, her voice soft as she gazed at the horizon. The human turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know. But I do know that I'm glad we did." Lyra smiled. The uncertainty that had once clouded her thoughts was now replaced by a simple truth. She was happy. And in that happiness, she found a sense of freedom that she had never known before. She no longer felt the pressure to be perfect, to always have the right answers. She could simply exist in the moment, allowing herself to feel and to grow. Her heart was still learning how to navigate these new emotions, but she was no longer afraid of them. They weren't something to be controlled or ignored. They were a part of her, just as much as her thoughts, her intelligence, and her curiosity. And as time passed, she realized that the human had taught her something vital. The ability to feel wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. Their connection had become a bond unlike anything Lyra had ever known. She no longer saw herself as a visitor to Earth, an outsider who was simply passing through. She felt as though she had found a place for herself, a place where she was valued not for her species or her mission, but for who she truly was. One afternoon, the human took Lyra to a small cafe on the edge of the city, a place he often went to when he wanted to escape the hustle and bustle. They sat by the window watching the people outside as they went about their day. The cafe had a quiet charm, with soft music playing in the background and the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air. "I've been thinking," the human said as he stirred his drink. "You've been here for a while now, and I know you've had your doubts. But I think you found something, Lyra. You found something that most people spend their whole lives searching for." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Home," he said simply, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that took her breath away. "You found home here. Not because of where you're from or where you thought you were supposed to be, but because you've opened yourself up to the possibility of it." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. His words struck her deeply. She had always believed that home was something tied to a place, to a people. But now she realized that home wasn't just a physical location. It was a feeling, a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. And for the first time, she understood that she had found it here, with him, in a world that had once felt so foreign. Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, though she quickly wiped them away. She had never been one to show vulnerability, but with him, she felt safe. Safe to be herself, safe to express the feelings that had once seemed so out of reach. It was a feeling she cherished more than anything. "I didn't think I would find this," Lyra said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't think I would ever feel like I belonged anywhere. But now, I think I've found more than just a place. I've found people who accept me, who see me for who I am." The human reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm and reassuring, and Lyra felt a wave of comfort wash over her. "You've always belonged, Lyra. Maybe you just didn't realize it until now." They sat in silence for a moment, allowing the peacefulness of the cafe to envelop them. Lyra could feel the weight of the decision she had made settling within her, not as a burden, but as a source of strength. She had chosen to stay, to embrace what she had found, and in doing so, she had opened herself up to a future she hadn't expected, a future filled with new beginnings, new experiences, and new opportunities for growth. As they left the cafe, hand in hand, Lyra looked up at the sky, the stars already beginning to twinkle in the fading light. For the first time, She didn't feel the need to search for answers. She didn't need to know what the future held, because in this moment, she was content. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and with him by her side, she knew that no matter what came next, she would face it with an open heart, ready to embrace whatever the universe had in store. The station had fallen silent. The last of the pirates had retreated, their ships vanishing into the distant reaches of space. The hum of the station's power systems was the only sound left, a soft reminder that they had won. This time, Ilara stood at the edge of the control room, looking out through the thick windows that overlooked the vastness of space. The station had once been a place of refuge, a place where survivors could rest and rebuild. But now, after the attack, it felt more like a temporary home, a place to regroup, to figure out what came next. Beside her, Jackson was working at the console, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls as he secured the station's systems. He had taken charge without hesitation, his experience guiding them through the chaos. He was a leader, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. "How's the situation?" Ilara asked, breaking the silence. Jackson looked up from the console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We've locked down all the outer entrances, and the station's shields are back up. For now, we're safe. But the pirates won't give up that easily. We'll need to stay vigilant." Ilara nodded, absorbing his words. She had never been part of a military or survival group before. She had always been a peaceful person, someone who believed that things could be solved without violence. But that was before she had seen the monsters, before she had experienced the brutality of the galaxy firsthand. Now she understood. Survival meant fighting for what you believed in, whether that was your life or the lives of others. And in that fight, there was no room for hesitation. Jackson stood up and walked over to her. "We need to figure out what we're going to do next. The station has enough supplies to keep us going for a while, but we can't stay here forever. We need to find out what happened to the rest of the survivors. There could be others out there who need help." Ilara turned her gaze back to the stars. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before her, endless and unknown. Her heart ached with the thought of all the survivors who might still be out there, scattered across the galaxy. She thought of her home, of her people, who had once believed they could make this planet their new home. They had been wrong. The monsters had taken everything from her. But maybe, just maybe, she could help someone else avoid the same fate. "I'm with you," she said quietly, her voice steady. "We'll find them. We'll make sure no one else has to go through what we did." Jackson looked at her with a small, approving smile. "Good. We'll need all the help we can get." For a moment, they stood together, looking out at the stars. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the understanding that they were no longer alone in this fight. Together, they had faced down the monsters, and together, they would face whatever came next. Later that day, Ilara and Jackson gathered with the small group of survivors who had made it to the station. The pirates' attack had left the place in disarray, but it was still functioning. The survivors, though shaken, were thankful to be alive. They were a mix of humans, aliens, and a few other species, all with their own stories of survival and loss. Jackson addressed the group, his voice strong and confident. "We've made it through the worst of it. The pirates are gone for now, but we can't let our guard down. Our goal is to find the rest of the survivors, to make sure no one else is left behind." Ilara stood off to the side, watching him. She was still getting used to being part of something like this. She had always been an outsider, a lone survivor. But now, with Jackson and the others, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. After the meeting, Jackson approached her, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you're with us, Ilara. You've got more strength than you know." Ilara looked at him, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm just doing what I can. You saved me, Jackson." I'm not sure I'd still be here without you. Jackson gave a small shrug. I didn't do it alone. You fought with me. We're a team. Ilara smiled, the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in a long time. It felt good to be part of something again, to know that she wasn't alone in the fight for survival. For the first time, she wasn't just holding on. She was moving forward. Over the next few days, Jackson and Ilara worked together to plan their next steps. They would leave the station soon, but they needed to prepare. The pirates might return, and there was no telling what other dangers the galaxy had in store for them. Ilara found herself in the station's medical bay, helping patch up some of the survivors who had been injured during the pirate attack. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew enough to assist. As she worked, she found herself thinking about her people, about the home she had lost. She would never forget what had happened, but she knew she couldn't let the past hold her back. There was too much to do. As the days passed, Ilara's confidence grew. She had learned to fight, to survive. She had learned that she was stronger than she had ever believed, and with Jackson by her side, she knew she had a chance to make a difference. Finally, the day came when they were ready to leave the station. The survivors gathered together, their faces filled with a mix of fear and determination. They were leaving the safety of the station, but they were not going alone. They were a team, and they would face whatever came next together. Jackson stood at the front of the group, his gaze steady. We've all been through hell, but we've made it this far. Together, we can survive anything. Ilara stood beside him, her heart swelling with pride. For the first time, she truly believed in that. They could survive. Together. As they boarded their ship and began to leave the station behind, Ilara looked out at the stars once more. The future was uncertain. But she knew one thing for sure. It was hers to fight for, and she wasn't going to back down.